What's going on, guys? Today is a great day for me, and it's because I got the LS3 in the Z. So that kind of rhymed. But anyways, I wanted to go over my mounts and how I was able to fit all the dry sump components in the engine bay, as well as what parts I ran and so on and so forth. So less of me and more of the motor. So there it is. Fully built LS3 AVA dry sump system. Obviously a Holley high ram, can't miss that. So I went a less conventional route than most people. Like a lot of people just go with like ISR for their swap mounts, and there's nothing wrong with that. But ISR does move the LS further back than the VQ sits from factory, so you actually end up with more space up front. Well, it's cool and all. It would pretty much drastically change the handling characteristics of the car because of the weight distribution. So I personally have been driving Zs with VQs in them for 6 years now. So I don't want to change it up, how it drives too much, other than the power, of course. So I measured where the VQ sits in the 350Z engine bay, and I wanted to set the LS exactly where that sat, which is to the front of the engine on the VQs. From this strut tower point is 5 inches, and that's exactly where I have the LS sitting. So it should drive pretty much the same, will handle pretty much the same, excuse me. So, and how I did that, it's actually super cost effective. I bought CX Racing's motor mounts, and that was it. I only had to buy that for the swap to bolt this in here. Well, obviously with the exception of the adapter plate, which is an LOJ one that I'm running. But I'm using a factory cross member, automatic one, as well as you can use a 6-speed one too. You just have to pop out the little threaded nut, the welded on threaded nut, and then just run a bolt through. And then you flip it around, because it gives you 1.5 inches more room to scoot the engine back, because that's about how much shorter the automatic transmission is in the 6-speed. And I'm using a factory carbon fiber automatic 350Z drive shaft. The automatics have essentially the same drive shaft at the 6-speed, but it's 1.5 inches shorter. So, and ironically, when I measured the motors, the LS3 front to back, bell housing, not bell housing, but where the bell housing was made up on the back of the block to the front of the block, is 1.5 inches longer than a VQ. So it all worked out pretty well. So now I have a bunch of OEM parts mounting this in here, and I mean, you can see where it sits. It's not like super far forward or anything. You also don't have to buy a shifter relocation kit. You can use your factory tripod, which I know some people have had. I'm not going to name which specific brands because I don't brand bash, but some people have problems with the shifters coming loose and so on and so forth. So now you have a completely factory shifter set up in there, which we all know works great. So that's one less thing you have to buy. So overall, really cost effective to do it this way, and again, should handle just like Z with a VQ in it, just with twice the horsepower. So that handles, so that covers the mounts, excuse me. Now I'm going to go over the drive belt assembly. So LOJ, they offer a whole bunch of stuff for the LS and into the Z33 chassis. This is an LSA water pump they sell, and this is their power steering bracket here. You use a factory 350Z power steering pump, so that's real simple. I just converted the fittings to AN, so it looks nice and clean. And then the LOJ water pump they use, LSA water pump they use, is Corvette spacing. So that worked out perfect with an AVA dry sump system, which also has Corvette spacing. So, and then the problem though that I ran into that I had to solve was the dry sump pump sits where LOJ's kit puts the alternator. So the alternator now is going to sit over here with the help of a ICT alternator bracket and tensioner. So a belt tensioner over here and on the power steering pump, so I can set the tension, you know, on 2 separate spots on 2 furthest points away. So that's pretty cool. This uses like an AC Delco alternator, and also obviously Corvette spacing, so it all lines up. So yeah, I mean, pretty easy. There's a lot of stuff off the shelf that you can buy for these things to get it to work right. So oh yes, dry sump tank that actually sits. It's not finished, so bear with me here on how this is going to plop in there. I have to mount it still, but more or less it's going to be like that. Obviously my battery's in the trunk, so I don't have to worry about that, but you can see where my hookups are going to go. My feed, and then my return line, and then my breather. And the breather's sitting right there behind it. So I got my lines ran alongside here. Should have enough room for the headers. If not, then I'll have to figure that out when that comes up. And then that would basically be a complete engine bay, you know, minus probably gonna have a coolant overflow over there, and then maybe an oil filter relocation, something over here, because I have to run for the dry sump. I have to run the feed line, which I have taped up right here. I have to run that all the way over here, and then down at the bottom there is where there's a single inlet port for the dry sump system. So I'll probably run a line across here to an oil filter, and then down into the feed there. But yeah, that's pretty much it, man. Simple, easy, plenty of room up front to mount my radiator. This is exactly where I had it with the VHR setup that was in here. So next step for me, I just have to install the factory tripod, because I had a shortened shifter. I thinking I was going to need it, ended up don't. So install the tripod, drive shaft, order my alternator. I have to get Comp Cam specific valve covers, because I have their rocker arms. They're Pro rocker arm, Pro Magnum, Ultra, whatever the hell rocker arms, and they require Comp's valve covers that has like an internal oiling system in the valve covers. So I got to order those, slap those on there, and then I just clean and bill it. I'm going to be going with LOJ's Cook's headers. The reason for that is this motor's fully built, 14:1 compression. I'm going to be running E85. I want the biggest swap header that has the biggest primaries, and I believe the LOJ ones are like 1 inch and 7/8 primaries, so they're pretty chunky primaries. And they come to 3-inch collectors, whereas like an ISR one I think is 1 3/4 inch primaries, and then it comes to 2.5-inch collector, which is great for a stock LS, but not for something like this. So I'm going to be ordering those soon. Some fuel injectors, and then I can put the rails on, a few fuel fittings, a few dry sump fittings, and this thing's off for wiring, man. I'm freaking stoked. This is going to be mean. So anyways, hope you guys enjoyed my little insight into how I got this motor in here, where it sits, and look forward to sharing the rest of the journey with this build with you guys. So, you know, as always, stay tuned for more on DK's Garage.